Welcome to Jimbo's Garage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Jimbos Garage. Well, today I got a really good video for you. We're going to be building a really cool gate. Let me paint a picture a little bit for you to help you maybe understand. I've got a garage and I've got a house. Between the garage and the house, there's 10 feet. We're going to be putting a 4-foot gate in the center and then 2 3-foot panels on either side. There's going to be a radius the full 10 feet across. So both side panels and the gate are going to have the same radius all the way. We're going to be making this out of 1-inch by 2-inch rectangular tubing, and there's going to be an infill of wood on the inside of both the side panels and the gate. We're going to be using Tigerwood. Now this is something that I've never used before, but this is a really good looking wood, very durable for exterior use. I can't wait to build this project. So let's get started on today's video. Today's video is sponsored by King Metals. They've got all your fabrication needs in one location. From hinges to hardware, balusters to metal decor, brass to aluminum, and a whole lot more. You name it, they've got it. Check them out today at kingmetals.com. Now let's get back to today's video. Okay, so before we get started on this project, there's a couple things we're going to need to do. One of them is my welding table is just a few inches shy of 10 feet and a few inches shy of 5 feet. The gate we're going to be making is 121.5 inches, so it's a couple of inches over 10 feet and it's 6 feet tall, so it's going to take it out over to here somewhere. So I'm not going to be able to put the whole thing on my welding table, so what I've got to do is put my welding table extension that I'd made about a year ago for a project. And what that's going to do is it's going to add, it's going to make the table about 11.5 feet wide, and it's going to make it about 7 feet, 11.5 feet long, I should say, and about 7 feet wide. So with that extension on here, we're going to easily be able to put the gate and get it laid out properly. But before I do that, I've got to take off the vise here. And if you remember, that was a couple years ago when I made this modification right here to add the vise to the end of the welding table. One of the plans was to bolt it to the half 13 bolt pattern that is on the welding table. In the event that I need to remove it, just remove the 4 screws and we'll be able to take this off. And the beauty of that is this vise can be laid anywhere on this table if I need to. So let's get started. We take this thing off, we'll get the extension put on. All right, yeah, so I made this this vise bracket for the end of the table right here. Thought it was a cool idea, and it is. I thought I would use it a lot more than I do, and it turns out that I don't really use it that often. I got lots of other vices around the shop, but I probably won't put it back on, but it's nice to have just in case I need it. All right, and then this is my table extension. I made this a couple of years ago for a project, and it was a one-time deal, and I've used it several times since then. It works pretty good. I made it super tight tolerance. I mean, it fits really tight, as you can see right here. It takes a lot to get it in there, but once you get it in, it works pretty good. You know, getting it lined up is one thing, and getting it flush to the top of the table. It does ultimately get there, and it works pretty good. So like I said, the table's got half 13 bolt or screw pattern all the way around it, and these are half 13 bolts, and they just screw right in. And I'm just tapping everything into place right here. You know, I get started right there, and then you can see it's such a tight fit that a sledgehammer here takes a little bit to get it pounded up into shape, but once it's up there, there it is. It's just nice and level. A little rusty. This has been sitting outside for a while. Don't use it all the time. It's hard to store something like this, but it's all good. All right, with that done, this is the what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out everything here. The first thing is this radius piece. Now, this is something that I had my metal supply store make for me, pre-bend it, put the radius on. It's long. It's about 12 feet long. I had them do that purposely so I can be sure that I got the right length, and then I'll be able to trim it accordingly. So basically what I'm doing right here is I'm going to lay this whole thing out on my welding table. I'm going to mark it. I'm going to mark the side panels. I'm going to mark the gate and just attach everything to the welding table securely and then weld it together. All right, so I'm starting to cut this radius piece off. Now you can see that I'm not using a guard on this grinder. This is the only grinder I have. You can see my rack underneath. All of those have guards on them. This one doesn't. It's got a 6-inch blade, and I use it for cutting these long cuts that have to go through thick metal and trying to keep them straight. I did that on the first cut right here, and now I'm using it. I just kept using it on this one where I didn't really need it. I could have used my other grinder, which I am going to switch to that here in a minute. You'll see. So I know guards are very important to have. You should always have it on there, but this is the one grinder that I have that I don't have a guard for. All right, so here you go. I switched back over to my other one now since I'm not making any of those long cuts and everything is just short like this, and I've got them all marked anyway with the Sharpie. And I'm using Mercer. I use Mercer. All my abrasives are Mercer products. This is a Mercer cutoff wheel. Works really good. I have no issues with them. A lot of detail, a lot of cutting to get everything just right. I've done a couple of gates that are similar to this in the past, and it just seems like the more you do, the better you get, or you learn something from every one of them, that's for sure. All right, you can see I've got it laid out. You might see the Sharpie mark right there on the table, and I'm going to clamp everything down as it would be complete. This is the best way that I think that I should do this in order to make this perfect and fit in the opening properly. All right, I'm over to the Evolution cutoff saw and cutting things to length right now. I'm going to cut all the pieces that I need prior to assembly here. I got a lot of people ask me what type of blade do I use on my cutoff saw. Well, this is a 14-inch Champion Brute RZR metal cutting blade. I've been using these for years now, and I've had no issues with them. They seem to be very sharp. They work well. Get a lot of cuts per blade. I think they're available on Amazon. You can check them out there. All right, with all the pieces cut, it's time to start assembling things. Now this is, you'll see clamps after clamps after clamps. You can't have enough, man. I've got a ton, and in this situation, there's a lot of things that need to be clamped into place. But this is the importance, I believe, of doing a gate like this where you've got 3 sections and they're trying to all fit together nicely, and in an opening, you just have to have, the tolerances are very tight, so you have to have everything just right. Especially using these lock boxes. When you got a lock box like this and you've got a lock set that goes in there, the tolerances have got to be really close in order for that lock box and lock assembly to work. So lining everything up, clamping everything in place, and getting it just where it needs to be. Takes a lot of time to do this, but it's important. It's a real important step to get everything just right. All right, once everything is just right, there it is. I've checked for square. I've checked my tolerances. I'm happy with everything. And now I'm just going to go ahead and just do as much welding as I can while everything is clamped down into place. That kind of keeps everything from not moving around so much. Yeah, sometimes you'll see me doing some stitch welding there, and that's just because the gaps from cutting it, I might have got off a little bit, and I'm having to fill a pretty wide gap right there. Lockbox is important to be sure it's level with the working surface. And then here's a good example. This is a piece of 1/4-inch solid round bar stock. I had a really big gap right here, and so I use that to fill the gap, and I'll clean that up a little bit later. And as you know, I grind all my welds, at least all the ones I can get to on the outside. So if they don't look super pretty, that's because they're eventually going to get smoothed out. All right, so I've welded just about as much as I can right here before I start changing things around. All right, so it's time to get the hinges welded on right here, and these are the bullet hinges. I get people have left some comments saying that hey, I can't get them lined up properly. Well, that is important. You see that I tacked it on there, and it's on a little crooked, and I had to cut that tack off. And sometimes you need to bang it around to get it nice and lined up. And the way I usually do this is I tack them in place, and then I just eyesight it up and down the frame to be sure that those hinges are in line with the gap, in line with your frame. And once they are, you shouldn't have any problems at all. These things are cool. You just weld them on one side. They've got a nice little flat area to weld to, and it's super strong. I learned the hard way when I first got these. I tried to weld on both sides and fill it all up on both sides, and that does not work, by the way. Don't do that. Only weld on the one side of the hinge that gives you that flat section to weld to. All right, and then here I am just going around grinding everything down. Well, I'm using the Mercer ceramic flap disc right here. 60 grit is my go-to. I've mentioned that in the past. I have all the grits, sizes, and for the most part, I found for what I use, a 60 grit is the way to go. And this is just all the welds that are visible on the outside, or accessible, I should say, on the outside to clean up. All right, once I got this all done here and I'm happy with it, it's time to unclamp everything and set it aside, and I think I can remove my table extension right now. The table extension is a nice thing to have when you're doing large projects like this, but it is kind of cumbersome. So I can't wait to get this thing off, and I'm done with it, and set it aside and get back to my regular table. It comes off a lot easier than it goes on. Doesn't take very long. All right. So back finishing up the welds on each panel here. This is one of the side panels. I mentioned in the intro that the opening is 10 feet and that I was going to have 2 3-foot side panels and then a 4-foot gate. Well, that's not quite what it was. The side panels were 31 inches, and then the gate was a little over 4.5 feet or something like that. So it ended up being a little bit wider than 4. All right, and then this is the way that I retain the wood by taking this piece of 1/8 inch by 3/4 inch flat bar stock and go around the perimeter of the front side of the gate. And love these mag squares. I got these things on Amazon. They're the perfect size for me. I ended up buying a whole bunch of these things and use them all the time, especially for something like this. Works out really good. So what I'm doing right here is I'm starting with just a little tack, and about every 6 or 8 inches apart, and then ultimately I come back once I get everything in and tacked into place. I'll come back and add a little bit to each one of those tacks to make the weld about 1 inch long. Right now it's just tacking to get everything into place. And then for the radius, I've got a piece of this flat bar stock, and I'm just notching it about every 3 inches, about halfway or so through, and then it allows it to bend and just hold everything into place. Now this radius isn't a big radius, but if you had a bigger radius, which I've had before, I sometimes notch these things about every inch apart, and it works better that way. But for this small radius, and then come back and fill in with the welds, and then just grind those down. And you can see where I came back and I've added to those welds a little bit, made them a little bit longer. All right, so this frame here is done. Pretty much, this is just one of the outside frames. Went around and welded everything. Got these little backer pieces of bar stock on the inside. This is what's going to retain the wood from the back side. It stiffened the frame up pretty good. Got everything all ground down. Everything is nice and smooth. There's one thing that happens every single time I make a gate frame. It doesn't matter how big it is. It doesn't matter how thick the steel is. But no matter, whenever you put heat into a frame like this, no doubt it draws. It puts a warp in the frame. This thing is warped. That side is warped. No matter how much heat you put into it, if you guys out there know, you guys fabricators, know how to solve this, let me know, please. I've tried just about everything as far as clamping everything down nice and tight, alternating the heat back and forth very little bit at a time. No matter how I go about doing it, it always gets to draw. This thing right here has got a bow in it right here. And I'm going to try to get the camera down and show you the bow. And I'll show you how I fix it. Seems kind of barbaric, but it works for me. And so let me show you if I can show you this bow, and I'll show you what it takes to fix it. All right, so I'm trying to hold the camera steady right here. The camera's heavy. I've got all kinds of stuff on it, so it's kind of heavy to hold. Now, I don't know if you can see that. I can't tell if the camera picks it up. It's not much, but it is a bow. And it is probably about 1/4 of an inch and about 6 feet. I don't know. Let me see if I can bring this back a little bit. I don't know if you can. Let me see if I can bring it back a little bit more. I don't know if you can see it or not, but anyways, whether you can or you can't, there's about 1/4 inch bow in there. Let me show you what it takes to fix it. All right, so the first thing you got to do is you got to back up the back side. In this situation, I'm going to use a couple of my table dogs right here. Going to drop them in. Now I've got some pressure against it right here. The next thing you're going to do is you got to keep a block of wood handy at all times. I use the aluminum plate. So when I take this, which every fabricator needs to have one of these in their shop, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Sometimes these things come in handy. I use the aluminum plate, so when I take a swing, I don't hit my welding table and put a big dent in it. So I put that down to stop that. Now that's in there, that's up against there. A couple good licks with this 12-pound sledge. Just like that. One more, and that'll straighten that right out. Pull it up, put it right in there, pull that right in there like that. One more big lick. Just like that. Look at that. Straight as a string line. That is the way you straighten it out. At least that's the way I straighten it out. Yeah, I know it seems kind of crazy, but it works for me. And I know there's probably a better way, but I don't know. If you guys know, let me know, because I always have this problem. But anyways, you can see I've got a cross piece in there temporarily. I've got this thing spread. I'm finishing up the welding right here on them all the way around. You can see the other two side panels are complete off to the left right there. And I got a little bracket on the bottom there for attaching it to the wall. But on this one here, temporary brace across there, and I'm spreading it a little bit wider. The opening, so the bow is actually going out. When I'm welding this all in, welding everything up, when I take it off, it's going to close back up. All right, so this lock box, here it is. Just a lot of detail going on right here. You know, the frame is 2 inches. The lock box is 1 5/8 inches. That leaves that little bit of section that I need to fill, and that's what I'm doing right here. But when I do that, it cuts off the area of the round section in the lock box, so you can't get the lock in. So that's why I'm creating this little radius here to kind of open that up, So when you when you set it in there, the lock assembly will fit in. You'll see what I mean here in just a second. You know, a lot of detail, a lot of custom stuff goes into some of these gates, most of them, because they all require some sort of detail that's custom. And kind of like that right there. So you can see now, you can see that the round lock assembly will fit in there nice and evenly. And then I'm just going to weld this into place. And then I'm just going to grind that down and kind of make, you know, when it's all over with, it's all going to look like it's part of the frame right here. And then just finish cleaning up these welds right here. And I always like to come back with a piece of non-woven pad right here that cleans up. You know, the flap disc does a great job. It sometimes leaves some really sharp edges, and that non-woven pad I just use, I come back behind everything and just give it a wipe down, and it just smooths things out really nice. All right, so once I got that done, again, repeating the same process here with the 3/4 inch by 1/8 inch flat bar on the big section of gate right here. And there's just about all those mag squares. I got 6 of them. It's important to keep that piece flush to the frame. You know, you don't want to have it lower, you don't want to have it higher. It's going to affect the look ultimately, and that's what those mag squares, they keep everything nice and flush. And makes it really easy for you to do the assembly here. A little bit of custom stuff around the lockbox right here. I have to have the same thing. I need to have this flat bar stock go around the outside because that wood is going to be trimmed around the outside there as well. That needs to be there to retain it. And then this is the radius piece for the top again. About every 3 inches, about halfway through on something like this. It's just enough to hold it in place for this radius. You know, sometimes like this one right here, you see that although it is, the radius is not that big and you can pull it in with your hands in most cases, but in this situation here, I'm using a clamp and I'm just pulling it up to be sure that it's nice and tight up against the frame. Nice and tight and nice and flush to the top. All right, once it's all in, I'm just going to weld up those saw marks, and then ultimately just take the flap disc, go down and grind everything down. A lot of grinding. This is where the 60 grit comes in pretty handy. You know, sometimes it might leave some grinder marks if they got a brand new disc put on there, and that's when I come back with 120 grit. And just run that over the top of everything, and it just smooths everything out real smooth. But once you get a couple of uses on a flap disc with 60 grit, it just kind of makes it, wears them down a little bit, and it's the perfect grit. And there it is, all complete. I'm happy with it. All right, and this is the Tigerwood, and that is the oil finish that I'm using. Stain oil finish, Penafin it's called. I'm using this stuff. They say it's a one coat application. Now I'm not a one coat originally, but I mean I think it's a maintenance thing, just like anything out in the weather. Even though it's an oil stain, I think that it says it's just a one coat application. That's all you need, but I would imagine after a couple of years, you'd need to refreshen it up, probably just like anything. Don't know. I'm just assuming. This stuff comes in different colors. This is like a darker color, and I think this is it's going to look nice on this wood. You can see this Tigerwood. Now, I've never worked with this stuff before. It's got, look at the grains. You got different looks, different grains. Some of it's smooth. Some of it's got some darker grain to it, and it's just all part of it. I had this milled at a local lumber yard that specializes in hardwood and milling for wood decks, fencing, railings, and stuff like that. It's called Advantage Lumber. There might be a few of them around the United States. I don't know. But they milled it. They milled the tongue and groove on it as well. Milled it to the right size for me. It's a really good job. They do a really good job with that. It's important to get this stain inside the groove part and the tongue. Just cover everything. You want to be sure that everything gets covered. You want to seal it up completely. It takes a little bit of time. I'm just using a little sponge applicator right here. You probably could use a rag or whatever. This works the best for me to getting inside the groove part. All right, moving along right here down to the last board. You can right here. You can just see the different woods, how it's got the different grain and the different texture, and some are lighter, some are darker. All right, well, there they are. Next day later, they're dried up, and now it's time for assembly. Now I've already pre-cut these things, and didn't want to bore you with that, but you get the idea. I've got them laid out in the order that they go in. And that tongue and groove is milled so perfect. It's such a tight fit. I mean, you can just squeeze those in, and it's perfectly flush to the top right there. It's nice and smooth. They work really well. I'm liking the looks of the grain and the wood on this. And then right down to the last piece. Now, usually I try to make it evenly, but since this is such a small little piece in the very end, you're not really going to see it. So you can see that I'm pulling it in tight and then dropping some wedges in there. This does two things. It pulls it nice and tight, plus it straightens out any other draw that I may have in the gate frame, making everything nice and square. And then I finish it up with this angle iron. This is a 3/4 inch angle, and I'm just using the block with the tape on the bottom and a clamp. The reason for that is I don't want to mar the front side of the gate. That's why I'm using that piece of wood with the tape on it. Keeps everything nice and smooth, no damage. And then this is just a piece of cardboard, the same thing, something to rest my drill on, so I don't mar the surface of the wood. I learned this the hard way. I, didn't use this before, and I had some issues where I had screwed up the surface, both front and back, and, you live and learn by your mistakes. On the radius part right here, you can see they're about 12 inches apart. It's just whatever it takes to pull everything in nice and tight. And then on the straight, longer sections, maybe every 2 feet apart or something like that. It's designed to be able to remove and replace this wood if you need to, and then put the angle iron back. Here's my operating table here. Getting all my tools, everything I need on this blanket, so I don't want to damage the wood surface. It's finished at this point. And then the vacuum to get all the metal chips up out of the way. And I don't want to risk doing any damage as well there. At this point, this is all the finished product, and I got to keep everything nice and clean. All right, so here's the lock box. Got a little detail around that as well. And we've got to hold that wood in. And this is what I'm just using some little wood screws right here. Little angle iron around the outside of the lock box. All right, well, that's going to be close. Wrapping it up right here. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. This was a fun build for me. Every gate's different, and I love just doing it, having a challenge with every gate, and I just enjoy that, seeing the finished look. Don't forget to check out my website at JIMBO'sGarage.com. We got all kinds of merchandise over there, torch lead holders and table dogs. There's finished product installed. Turned out really good. Couldn't ask for anything better than that. I was really happy with it. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next video.
See you next time on Jimbo's Garage.